On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, is Chet Holmgren worth the max? What does the first year for Brooks Barnheiser look like? And can the Thunder repeat as champions? At your mailbag podcast on today's Locked On Thunder podcast.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by FanDuel, we're diving into the Thunder's preseason schedule being announced, contracts officially being signed, and of course, your mailbag questions, which involve everything from Summer League to the rotation to the odds of repeating and so much more. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. Only real piece of news over the weekend since our last show was that Oklahoma City has announced their preseason schedule. The preseason will begin on October 5th in Charleston, South Carolina, against the Charlotte Hornets. And then October 6th, the Thunder will play in Fort Worth, Texas, against the Dallas Mavericks. So the rare back-to-back in the preseason and the ultra-rare back-to-back in non-NBA venues in the preseason for Oklahoma City. And then they'll play the Hornets again on the 9th in OKC. Go to Indiana for a finals rematch on October 11th. Go to Milwaukee on October 14th. And then end the preseason on October 17th in OKC. And then the regular season will begin, of course, around the 20-something of October, whenever the ring night will be on a Tuesday night. So then I would assume the following Tuesday after October 17th is when the regular season will begin. You can also assume that training camp and media day will be about a week before October 5th. And so you can start to kind of piece together how this schedule is going to unfold. And it just perfectly shows you the fact that there really is no off season for Oklahoma City. They're still not wrapped up with Summer League yet. That'll happen this week. And they're going to head right into all of the preseason affairs. So get your non-NBA stuff out of the way in August, because it's right back to it here pretty soon. Again, Chet and J-Dub did officially sign their contracts today. It was announced by the team. Whenever Shams and them put it out, it's always historically right. But whenever the team puts out the press release, that's when it's officially made its way through the NBA system and through the NBA office, and now it has. So with that being said, let's dive into your mailbag questions, and a lot of them center around Chet Holmgren. The first one from Braxton, I can assume that Alex Caruso will see his minutes managed again. Will Chet Holmgren's minutes also be managed? I think that's fair to assume. On both fronts. Alex Caruso was very open in the finals media day sessions about how the Thunder helped him in the regular season, understanding that Caruso plays one way, and that's a very taxing style of play. So if you asked him to play that taxing style of play through the course of 82 games, then you wouldn't be able to have him in all likelihood for the entirety of the season and postseason. The Thunder kind of bubble wrapped Alex Caruso, and it paid off big time when he could navigate the entire playoff run for a guy who has dealt with injuries the last couple of seasons. Now, will it be to that extent for Chet Holmgren? I don't think so. I think the most extreme example of load management being the common term now in the NBA will be with Alex Caruso. But with Chet, this is a guy who statistically is just better with more days off. Now, that's the case for most players. It's heightened with Chet that he's just better offensively when he has more days off leading into that game. And there's just not a real need, honestly, to extend these guys in back-to-backs and 3-game and 4 nights. I could be way off base on this, but just the way that I view it, we just laid out the preseason schedule. We just laid out that this thing is coming in a hurry. And with the season beginning pretty soon, and the fact that you have to account for two things. The first thing just is a factor in any season, no matter what. The in-season tournament, now known as the NBA Cup, it's structured in such a way that they try to make the in-season cup, the NBA Cup, a big deal. So with that being said, they don't want to play NBA Cup games, whether it be pool play games or the add-on games, in your knockout round. They don't want to play those on back-to-backs. So that has an abnormally spaced out October, December, November period for teams. And they also have to hold in some dates too, because you don't know exactly who you're going to play. Your matchups will be determined based on pool play. So with the spacious, first 3 months of the season, you've got to cram those games back in there somewhere. And it's led to some really intense Januaries for Oklahoma City and for every team around the NBA. At some point in the next calendar year, you will see a part of the schedule where you're playing like 17 games in 20 nights or something crazy like that. And so for a team that just played into June, you have to be overly cautious of that stretch. And if you look around the NBA Cup schedule, like barring the Thunder just not competing in it, like in the sense of like they truly just roll over in these games, which has not been their MO, they have a heck of a chance to get back to Vegas. And they have an even greater chance to play that 83rd game again. Coming off of a season in which they played 83 games in the regular season because they played the NBA Cup Championship, which is the 83rd game. And then they played 2 playoff rounds and went to 7 and made the finals and played deep into June, the last possible date of the season the Thunder played. So with all of those factors, I think everyone across the board has to see a shift in minutes, and it has to see a shift in rotation. Because the sentiment that Alex Caruso shared, obviously his is to the nth degree, because he truly does throw caution to the wind when he's on the court. He's diving for every loose ball. He just has no regard for himself or others on the basketball court. His only regard is the basketball and to find ways to get possessions for OKC. And that's awesome. It does lead you to injuries. But that same mindset is held by a lot of players and prominent players on the Thunder team. The whole 0-0 thing where they attack every single game, that's very taxing. And so you're going to have to manage minutes in 3 games and 4 night stretches, in back-to-back stretches. You're going to have to find ways to get guys some time off. It just is a fact. And with Chet, you kind of have a double-edged sword here with Chet. I don't think it has anything to do with his injuries history, because to me, his injury history is kind of null and void in a way, because they both happen in such freak scenarios. When Chet doesn't have something Freaky Friday happen to him, he plays 82 games. Like, that's what we know about Chet so far. If he doesn't play on a sloppy pro-am court and have a Liz Frank fracture, or doesn't fall directly on his hip and just perfectly on his hip to where it shatters his hip, he plays 82 games. So it's not so much about the injury, but it's about the double-edged sword of Chet's better with rest. You also want to get some minutes for Thomas Swarber. And like, this is an easy way to do it by managing Chet and Neihart. And the importance of having guys like Chet and Neihart on a healthy roster come April for a season that you hope will extend again into June. So you're hoping to play into June again after just playing the longest possible season you could play, the 83 game season, and playing to the last possible date of the NBA calendar. So I think that the answer is yes. And it goes beyond just Chet, but especially Chet. Now, another Chet question is one that I do and don't get from old Petey. Petey asks, is Chet Holmgren worth the max? And the way that he asked it was, Chet Holmgren isn't worth the max. Change my mind. Now, look, it's tough to debate yourself, right? You can make the argument that Chet Holmgren isn't worth the max if your argument is that nobody's worth the max. If your argument is that Chet Holmgren isn't worth the max because maxes should be reserved for Shea and Giannis and Jokic and players of that ilk, then I can see where you're coming from, but then would have to remind you that while this is called a max contract, it's not the same as those guys' max. It's the rookie scale max, which everybody gets. If they show any amount of promise, you get the rookie scale max. And that's just the way the NBA fundamentally works. That's just the way that the NBA operates. So, I think that sometimes, because it's all happening so fast, and you just hear the word max, you think that they're all the same. But there is a difference in the max after your rookie contract extension and the max you get right now. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, if we're operating under that system now, that most every talented first-round pick gets the rookie scale max, I would ask you, how is he not worth it in that case? Because what Chet Holmgren is the top 3 defender in this sport. He has an exceptionally high ceiling offensively, but a complementary floor. I think that Chet's baseline and his floor offensively is one that is additive to his skill set and the Thunder. Because the floor for Chet offensively is him being a guy that can hit trailing threes, that can knock down catch and shoot jumpers, and can find his way to the rim a little bit as a roller. In other words, he's just a above average or a plus play finisher, and that's kind of it. So if he hits his floor, to me, he'll be one of the best defenders the league has, and he'll be one of the best play finishers the league has. And then if you factor in his ceiling is what you saw before the hip injury on November 10th. Now, how does that November 10th hip injury change the equation is up for you to decide, which is then where you lean on the floor. Because the floor, to me, is independent of that injury. I think still today, I have no change of heart of if he can reach that floor. That's why it's his floor after that hip injury. I do have a little bit of a change if he can reach his ceiling post-hip injury. But his ceiling post-hip injury, to me, is a guy who can score at all 3 levels, who can create for himself off the catch, attacking hard closeouts, and who is an above average passer for his position, while being a top 3 defender in the sport. So no matter if Chet Holmgren reaches his ceiling or his floor, to me, that's worth a max contract in this capacity. It's worth the max contract that everybody gets. The max contract that even in the era of aprons and hard caps and the worry and the gripes with the CBA, everybody still dubs the fun max. You know how hard it is in this current CBA to call anything fun when you're giving away money? And yet still, this is just considered the no-brainer fun max. So to me, the question is flawed because of how the NBA works, but it's also just wrong in how you evaluate Chet Holmgren. Because I don't really think that there's a different evaluation of Chet than that. If you can agree that his floor is just a guy who can knock down threes and finish plays at the rim, and you couple it with his defense, you wouldn't max that guy out? You wouldn't keep that guy around? I don't know. I don't know if I've changed your mind, Petey, but that's how I see it. That's how I see Chet Holmgren. Now, when you talk about the bigger picture CBA stuff, I'd refer you back to last week's pod. Both shows at the end of the week talked about the second apron, and you can make your own decisions from there on if it's worth it. But if you're just talking about individually Chet Holmgren himself being worth it, that's where we're at. Coming up, let's talk Brooks Barnheiser. There's a lot of Brooksy questions today. We're going to knock them all out, plus the Thunder's chances to repeat coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now, but our good friends over at Hungry Root, folks. Hungry Root's awesome. It is great. Let's be honest. Meal planning, grocery shopping, it can be overwhelming between busy schedules, picky eaters, trying to eat healthy. It's a lot to take in. That's why I love Hungry Root. It takes the stress out of planning on trying to fit everything into your schedule and trying to personalize it for you. They can do all that for you. They can make sure that you get exactly what you like and what you need at Hungry Root using their smart cart technology by recommending groceries, recipes, and even supplements that are tailored to your preferences. Whether you're dairy-free, gluten-free, focusing on your gut health, or just wanting to eat better overall, Hungry Root gets and has you covered. Go check them out today because it takes all the stress out of the process of meal prepping and grocery shopping. And it's great, I think, for both. If you're just on your own, you have no responsibilities, kind of like me, just on your own, doing your own thing. well, then it makes it so easy to just set it, forget it, and let Hungry Root handle it all. And if you have the kind of family aspect where you're pulled in 50 million different directions, it makes it even simpler there too to take one more thing off your plate. So take advantage of the exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box plus a free item for life by going to hungryroot.com/LockedInNBA. Use code LockedInNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedInNBA. Code LockedInNBA for 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day here, talking about your mailbag questions, including about Brooks Barnheiser. So we got a ton of questions about Brooks Barnheiser. We're going to state all the questions and then answer them one by one. Gavin says, how likely is it that Brooks pulls a AJ Mitchell and gets converted? Parker asked, did Sam Presti find another one with Brooks? And Hugh wants a juice rating on Brooks Barnheiser. So Brooks Barnheiser is a two-way contracted defensive ace. He set a record for steals in back-to-back games, going for 6 steals on Saturday after a 7-steal night on Thursday in NBA Summer League. He has shown potential offensively. That mid-range game, which is how he scored most of his points in college, it's still working for him with the Thunder in the Summer League. I hesitate to consider that a translatable skill to the NBA level. I think it's going to be obviously great in Summer League, great in the G League. I'm not sure how much he can get to the mid-range playing the role that the Thunder are going to ask him to play at the NBA level. And him doing that off the catch has been the most encouraging part, is that he can get to his spots playing off the catch, off the ball, because that's what it's going to have to be for him to get into the mid-range with the Thunder. But still, I'm not sold on that. However, going beyond that offensively, he pushes the pace very well in transition, both on the ball and reading the floor as an off-ball player, just running the lanes properly and letting Topic and these other guys set him up. The shot does have a hitch in it. You can kind of see the hitch in his giddy up whenever he's taking a three, but it's not unfathomable to believe that he can make it work, that he can turn himself into an average shooter. Because anything more than an average shooter for Brooks Barnheiser would just be gravy for OKC. Because if you can get his shot from three as an off-ball player catch and shoot option to average with what you believe he is defensively, well, then that's a rotational player. Then that's a player who can be converted into a standard NBA deal. So to me, I mean, it's great to think and have dreams about Brooks Barnheiser turning into this knockdown lethal shooter, but you just got to give him the average. And that's where it becomes more fun to think about Brooks Barnheiser. That doesn't seem like such a lofty goal. It doesn't seem so far away. I think he can get to average this season because he's going to be a low volume guy. He's a smart player that takes the right shots, makes the right pass off the ball. And his rim finishing is what really gets you excited in the Summer League right now. He's shooting 71% at the rim overall, which is very good. He has great touch on his layups, shooting 69% on layups. That's very nice and excellent even for what he's done in the Summer League. And then the 30% on catch and shoot shots this Summer League has been fine. Like that's been passable, serviceable. And the 1.2 points per possession in transition offensively is really good. So he's shown you enough offensive potential to make you believe that Sam Presti has found him another one in Brooks Barnheiser. And he's averaging in Summer League, combining Salt Lake City and Vegas, 9 points, almost 2 assists, 6 rebounds, 3.6 steals, and almost a block per game. His shooting splits is 50% from the floor, despite shooting 28% from three and 44% from the free throw line. So Brooks Barnheiser, I think, is well on his way of being the next in line to have his contract converted, similarly to AJ and Wiggins and Lou, and the Thunder have had a ton of guys who have seen the crossover from 2A guy to standard contract. In terms of his juice rating, if you're new to juice, the all juice team isn't even so much about, for example, Shea does not have the highest juice rating on the current Thunder, even though he's the best player. He's their best player, bar none. But he doesn't have the most juice on the team. Juice would be Alex Caruso. He leads the Thunder in juice right now. And Brooks Barnheiser is 3 out of 4 juice. 3 out of 4, which is exceptional. Because the juice is just about, it's about the intangibles or the motor or the intensity, the competitive edge, the physicality. All of that is far superior to just simple production. And obviously, the better you are defensively, because defense takes all those skills, raises your juice meter reading. So his is very high. Credit to Brooks Barnheiser. So that's your Brooks Barnheiser corner. We'll talk more Brooksy. You know me. I'm not opposed to talking Brooksy. That's my guy. I'm already a Barnheiser guy. A barn animal, if you will. Taylor asks, what does a successful season for Ousmane Dieng look like? I don't think that there's anything he can do this season to make it successful in terms of being a part of the long-term vision in Oklahoma City. Could be off on that. I do think that there's something he can do to have a successful season in terms of his personal NBA career. And he's not that far away. And this is the value of covering the G League and following Us and having that relationship with Us, that I can show you that he's not that far away because of what he does in the G League and what he's done at the NBA level. And when you combine the two, you can see the vision for what Us looks like as a player long term. Because right now, today, Us is a defensive NBA player. Like, you stick him on 29 other teams, he'd be in their top 5 defensive players list. Now, not in OKC, because the Thunder are a historically great defense with historically great defenders. But he's really good on that end of the floor. The problem for Us has been on the offensive end. And it really just boils down to his ability to shoot, catch and shoot three-pointers, because that's not came around from at any level yet. Most of his threes at the G League level even come with those eye-popping step backs and kind of creating his own three, which is good, but it's not what you're going to lean on Ousmane Dieng to do in the NBA. So it's kind of like you throw it out a little bit. You still keep it around because it proves that he can make threes, but it's not the type of threes that you would ask him to do at the NBA level. So if he can become consistent with his catch and shoot threes, that would immediately make him a rotational NBA player, just flat out. And then if he can become consistent in playing with force, with want to, with juice, as we just laid out, if he can do those things, he's going to be an NBA player for a long time. But we haven't seen him yet consistently attack the rim hard on cuts and like go up strong at the rim. He has the frame to do it. He has the athletic ability to do it. He just hasn't done it. We haven't consistently seen him compete for rebounds. He's shown flashes of all these things. He's shown flashes of the player he can be. But the key to success this season for Ousmane Dieng is just consistency. Can you consistently do these things to become an NBA player? Wesley says, do you think that Chris Youngblood makes his way to the final two-way spot? And Chris Youngblood's a guy who does not have a high juice rating, but he is still a very talented player because Chris Youngblood is a competitive defender, not a very good one, but a competitive defender with a really good motor. But really, with Chris Youngblood, it boils down to he just lets that thing fly from beyond the arc. And not only does he empty the clip from three, but he converts at a high clip. And that's exceptionally valuable for the Blue. And the reason I point that out would be, listen, this team is loaded. We're having trouble in July talking through how Mark is going to get all these guys on the floor of just their 15-man roster. If this Thunder team has to worry about two-way guys on the varsity club, something's gone terribly wrong, except for Brooks Barnheiser. If their third two-way spot really matters at the NBA level, something's gone really wrong. So you want to use that third two-way spot on someone who can help you develop guys in the blue. Adam Flagler was perfect in his role. And if you only focus on the NBA, if you're someone who only cared about the Thunder and didn't follow the G League at all, you probably think that Adam Flagler was just a blip in the radar. But he was truly valuable as a guy who can create for himself and others and space the floor offensively to the players that the Thunder would send down to the G League, and making the blue a more functional offense to then raise the level of the team to allow you to properly evaluate Ousmane Dieng and properly evaluate Dylan Jones and properly evaluate Brennan Carlson and properly evaluate these guys that you send on G League assignments. And so that's what you more so are looking for with this final two-way spot. So I think that, Chris Youngblood would be the leader in the clubhouse for me. If I was making the calls, it'd be Chris Youngblood. But I do think that there's other targets. Malachi Leones is a target. I think that Gortman's a target as a guy who, again, can set the guys up with the ball in his hands, get to the rim, kick out. But to me, there's two different problems with that. You already have Leone's G League rights, to my knowledge, right now, to where you wouldn't really need to put him on a two-way contract. I don't think that you're really in danger, all due respect to Leone's, of him getting an NBA deal or a two-way deal to where you'd lose the G League rights. So, you don't want to kind of double down on that if you already have him in your system, and he's a good player to have in your system. Gortman, I do think that he can help this team as a lead guard, but if Jamias Ramsey wants to come back to OKC and come back to the G League, then it's a little bit of redundancy, a little bit of overlap there with Gortman. I really like Eric Reynolds' college film as a prospect, the leading scorer all time at St. Joe's, and he was an awesome scorer in college. His summer league highlights to this point are mostly lowlights. So he hasn't done himself any favors in the summer league session. But there's also external options that are not even on the Thunder's summer league roster. But this is really so much of just getting the value for the blue with that two-way deal. I would, though, to answer the question, sign Chris Youngblood. Coming up, let's talk about the Thunder's chances of repeating. Let's talk about if the Thunder would have picked Carter Bryant over Thomas Schwarber, and so much more. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today because FanDuel is awesome. Summer sports are in full swing. So whether you're all about baseball under the lights or golf on the greens or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not just put a little more on it to make it thrilling with FanDuel? You can get into the game with your friends and check it out today at FanDuel.com to track your favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Make sure you place the same game parlay and watch the bet, riding it out all 9 innings on FanDuel. It's so fun to be part of the action. If you're a new customer to FanDuel, you can bet just $5 and get $150 if your first bet wins. So put $5 down on a lock and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to use your first-time $5 play for $150 back in bonus bets. If you want to bet on Summer League, there's the option there right now. The Raptors are the leader in Las Vegas Summer League Championships winner at plus 250. The Thunder are plus 600 to win the Las Vegas Summer League. I would not take that if I were you, but you can bet on who will win the NBA championship next season, where the Thunder are still the favorites for the entire NBA at plus 260. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Here answering your mailbag questions, I'm Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. For your next listen, go check out Locked On NBA for the national scope of basketball, and Locked On Spurs for more talk on Carter Bryant, because Blake asks, if Carter Bryant and Thomas Schwarber were both on the board at 15, would OKC still take Thomas Schwarber? There's no way to know this. And the reality is, unless you had some form of truth serum, the answer from the Thunder would always be yes, they'd take Thomas Schwarber because he's the guy that they actually drafted. But I really do think so. Because there's a reason that we predicted this exact pick before the draft began, before we even knew who was still going to be on the board. Because they like Schwarber. They really like Schwarber. And they got their guy. And I love Carter Bryant. He's a member of the All Juice team, referring back to segment 2. But Schwarber feels a need in a rare archetype. And I get it, he's a big man. It's like a lot of people don't value bigs because bigs are somewhat interchangeable. And by and large, in the NBA big picture landscape, I agree that it's not hard to find capable big man play. However, is it hard to find a big man who can play the way the Thunder want to play? I think that is hard. And Thomas Schwarber has the exact archetype of a Thunder big man. And if everything works out perfectly, he'll be the successor to Isaiah Hartenstein and really not force you to miss a beat because he has such a unique skill set as a playmaking big that it replaces it nearly 1-for-1 if everything works out with Thomas Schwarber. So I do still think that they take Thomas Schwarber despite my love for Carter Bryant and my belief in him as a player. I think that the Spurs knock that draft out of the park. I think that the Spurs are a team to be reckoned with in the future. They've done phenomenally. Max says, should Isaiah Joe be moved and what percentage chance does OKC have at repeating? So on the Isaiah Joe question, I don't think that you move Isaiah Joe just to move him. But you also can't be scared to upgrade his spot either. I think that Isaiah Joe's a guy that you take into the trade deadline. And I fully believe in Isaiah Joe. And I could be wrong on this. And we talked about this last week. I believe in Isaiah Joe being better from 3 next season. And by better, I'm more so talking about functionality versus being better in terms of percentages. Because I think that he can take another step up as a movement shooter and as a guy who can increase his volume of threes by product of creating more threes for himself and not on the ball, not off the dribble, but by being more comfortable in DHOs with Hartenstein, by being more comfortable curling off screens and immediately catch fire 3 from beyond the arc for Isaiah Joe. I think that those things will make him better and thus will make him a better playoff player and thus will keep him in the playoff rotation and then thus will help the Thunder's offense. But if I'm wrong on that and that development doesn't happen, then you can't be scared at the deadline and to my opinion, if you want to repeat, would have to at the deadline make a move to get you a better 3-point shooting team and a better 3-point shooting player. And I think that that's kind of what you're watching for in this regular season is how do the Thunder look from distance? Because the Thunder won an NBA championship in the modern era without shooting the ball well. In fact, they shot the ball pretty poorly from 3. That's not sustainable, even though you have an all-time great defense, and even though you have a electrifying all-time great scorer. I think you still need a little bit of help from 3. You don't need to reinvent the roster. You don't need to totally blow this thing out. It can even be Isaiah Joe's development, like we just talked about. But if that development number doesn't come around by February, and you find a trade out there where you can attach a pick to Joe and get somebody in return who you feel more comfortable with as a consistent option from 3, you'd have to do it at that point. But you're not just moving him for the sake of moving him. But the 3-point spot is a kind of archetype mold that Isaiah Joe is occupying right now that has to actually pay dividends next season. In terms of repeating, the percentages is interesting because let's just speak of the West. To me, in the West, OKC, Denver, and Houston have to have the 3 biggest slices of the pie chart. I think that those are the 3 legitimate contenders. But you also have to give chunks to Golden State with Jimmy and Steph, Luka and LeBron. If LeBron's still even in LA, what's going to happen with the Lakers? Minnesota's gone to back-to-back West Finals, and while I think that they got worse because they lost Alexander Walker, they still deserve a slice of the pie. And then a small slice for the field, whether that's Dallas getting healthy at the right time and going on a run or whoever, a small slice for the rest of the field. But the 3 biggest ones are OKC, Denver, and Houston. I think that OKC has the biggest of those 2 because Houston has the smallest chunk of those 3 because they have the most variables. And then Denver is just a slight percentage less than OKC. So that's just the West. And then you throw in the East, which I think is pretty easy to do because to me, it's Cleveland, it's New York, it's Atlanta, it's the field that you're just to protect yourself on the percentages. And you put all that together and you get what? A 35% chance, 42% chance of repeating for OKC. And that's pretty good considering that the teams attempting to repeat have been second round exits or worse in that following season. It's hard to do. There's a reason why it hasn't been done in almost a decade in the NBA to repeat as NBA champions. So I do think they have a good chance to. There's just a lot that's going to take to go right for OKC to actually get it done. Charlie says, is there more pressure to go back-to-back given how hard the roster decisions are moving forward? No, because I don't think of it as like more pressure. I think that the Thunder want to win the championship. I think that every team, except for the tanking ones, want to win a championship. And that the decisions don't necessarily make that more pressurized. Where the pressure comes from is like the Thunder's fringe roster players, or in this case, the Thunder's roster players you would look at and say, yeah, they're probably going to have to move on from so-and-so. They might feel pressure or want to prove themselves and to prove that they do need a bigger contract. They do need to stay around. They do need to do whatever. And that might help them in a way. But to me, the pressure is the pressure. The pressure, if they would have lost, would have been even greater if you want to just look at it from a standpoint of like taking the temperature check on the Thunder. But they won, and they want to repeat. They want to win a championship. And I don't think that you can like want to yourself. Like they just want to. It just is what it is. Taylor also asks, first one to go between iHeart, Dort, and Kaysen. To me, it's pretty easily iHeart. I think that you're going to have to decline his team option and hope that Swober is ready. Hope that you can find a replacement for iHeart, even though iHeart's a big part of what they do. And Hartenstein's been a wonderful addition, both to the community, to the team. He's been awesome. He's been outright awesome. Just financially speaking, he's going to have to be a cap casualty. And you can talk about, well, what if he takes a pay cut? To me, that's always bad business for a player to take a pay cut. It's also bad for the NBA PA for them to take a pay cut. And it's just also unrealistic to ask. We haven't really seen NBA players take a pay cut. Like, it's very popular in hockey, for example. Hockey players love playing for cheap. They just love it. I don't know what it takes mentally to be a hockey player, but it seems like it has to take loving pain because they take the most pay cuts out of any sport, and they get beat up the most of any single sport. It's unreal to me. But from top to bottom, you don't see NBA players taking pay cuts. Isaiah Hartenstein in particular, and I don't begrudge him for this, didn't take a pay cut to go back to New York. He took the most amount of money he could get, which is OKC. Now, his signing did mean more than just the money, as we wrote about on Thunder on SI with an exclusive interview with iHeart. But I just don't think that, like, all of a sudden now he's taking a pay cut. Could be wrong, but just if things play out the way we expect, I would think that iHeart would be the first one to go. And then Owen has a hot take for me to grade. Owen says that the Thunder will win 74 games this year. Wow. 74 games. That is a 10 out of 10 hot take. The Thunder are very talented. The Thunder could absolutely have the best record in the league again. The Thunder have the best roster in the league again, the most depth in the league again. They're an awesome team. But the breaks that it takes to win 74 games is unheard of, really. There's a reason why it's unprecedented. And there's also an element of like extreme luck involved, because let's just play out this theory that like this fantasy that the Thunder win, they've gotten in hand 70 wins and they're 4 wins away. And you would think that like you'd be motivated to just try to go break the record, try to go win 74 games. But you've also got to see the forest through the trees to where no matter what their win total is, you would have to park your best players on the bench for the last 4 games of the season like you did this year. Now, the Thunder are still deep enough to win those 4 games, no matter who they're against, especially if it lines up like it did this year where you're playing Utah and the Pelicans and teams trying to lose. They're talented enough to win. But that is also an added element of this, where it's like, I don't think that they're going to be motivated by just going for that record. I think they're going to be motivated for putting themselves in the best position to win a championship. And that's just kind of leaning on how they acted this season. This season, whenever that Cavs Thunder race was neck and neck of who would have the best record in the NBA, which in this case wouldn't be a contest. Like if you're winning 70-something games, you've blown out whoever has the best record in the East. So it's like just seeing how they were neck and neck and still didn't change their rotation, their plan, their intensity, their anything in the regular season, still kept it even keel in the regular season while having an opposition to get home court advantage, which is a big deal especially in this market, like you want to have home court advantage and play in the Paycom Center as much as possible, that I don't think that they'll change it for the sake of winning 74 games. And I also don't think they're going to be in contention to win 74 games. I'd be shocked if they won 68 games again. I think that they'll win less games this year than they won a year ago. And I don't think that they got worse as a team. I think that they will have a better product on the court this season. But the wins are hard. The wins are also just a function of the schedule in the sense of I believe that they're going to manage minutes, as we talked about in segment 1. I don't believe that they can manage minutes and be a 74-win team or be a 68-win team and management. So you can counter that pretty quickly with what they did in the regular season this year, being so banged up and still winning 68 games. But I just don't believe that the regular season win total is what's going to, behoove them a ton. Because it's like you look at Alex Caruso, even in games that he played in the regular season, he rarely reached the form that we saw him reach in the postseason. I think there's just going to be a different level of what the regular season looks like for OKC. I think that their days of like doubling their win total and gunning for the most wins, I think that those are kind of behind them a little bit with a championship in hand. But I could be wrong. I have a 10 out of 10 hot take on this, Owen, but I do have it bookmarked to either crown myself or you right on my grade for your hot take. And I'll say this, Owen, I'd give you a 69. If they won 69 wins, I'm saying I was wrong. So you have a big room of wiggle room to win this hot take battle. If you want your hot take graded, you can drop them down below in the comments on YouTube. You can drop them on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. And until tomorrow, we're going to rank every single Western Conference team. Be good and be good to one another.